Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
well, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Episode number 178. Hot and fresh, right out of the oven.
Yeah.
Just like Mama used to make.
Yep.
Indeed. Just my mother, the famous internet skeptic, just like she used to make. And it's a fun show today, I think. We have, well, is it?
Well, here's what's funny. As we were recording the intro, and I said the line, "We're going to share stories and seek knowledge to build a great life." I suddenly realized, well, we're not doing that. That's not happening
week,
at all,
anyway.
especially not this episode.
Yeah.
Well, it's
not necessarily this week.
We definitely bounce around space and time.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start us off with a deceased Polynesian god who had a, let's say, less than successful reign.
And then I am going to go shopping.
Yep, Dan's going to go shopping and come up with a whole bunch of bullshit. Yeah. And I am going to take us all the way to India via Portugal. Believe me, it's a strange journey, and you may want to miss it.
Yeah, it's a delightful time for all.
Yeah.
Why don't we just dive into it?
Let's do it.
Uncle Mark.
Well, hello.
I'm looking out my window now, and it has started to snow, and I am dreaming of warmer climes and happier places.
Warmer climes and happier places and the ability to travel to them at some fucking point.
Right, yes. And someday to once again board a plane and get myself out the fuck of here.
Yeah. Same with me. Sunnier climes.
Well, I can promise you one of those two things.
Okay.
Not both.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Uncle Dan. It's snowing outside. Just as we sat down to record, Donald Trump was acquitted of inciting the deadly insurrection that he absolutely incited.
Right.
We're still under the vile yoke of coronavirus with new and dangerous strains abounding, so let's get the fuck out of here, yes?
Yeah.
Yay.
Let's go as far away as we can on the good earth. Let's flee this strife-ridden continent and take our journey to one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world, Easter Island.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as we'll see, there's plenty of strife to go around. But our journey to this faraway island will at least allow us to add another member to our graveyard of the gods, Makemake.
Makemake.
Makemake, spelled make as one word, but pronounced probably incorrectly, Makemake.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So let's just start off with a pronunciation disclaimer. Here come a lot of Polynesian names and words. I will get a lot wrong. This is not out of disrespect, but simply because A, very few pronunciation guides exist for this subject, and B, the harder I try to properly pronounce foreign words and names, the more racist I sound.
Yeah.
So I'll do my...
And also, see, we're kind of dumb people anyway, so
Exactly.
You can't expect much of us.
Yeah, go. I'll do my best. Just go easy on me.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
So Makemake is the chief god of the pantheon of the people of Easter Island. He is the creator of humanity, the god of fertility, and the boss man of the pantheon. So he's a big deal there.
Classic.
Well, he was a big deal there. Interestingly, he appears to have never married, but has had several offspring that make up other parts of the pantheon. He is likely a version of the Tahitian god Tane or the Hawaiian god Kane. He is depicted as almost a bird-like creature with two huge eyes and a large beak-like nose, and in some cases even feathers. Resources about Makemake are scarce, for reasons we'll discuss. So many of the attributes and mythologies about Makemake have to be derived from the stories about Tane and Kane. However, although he sits atop the throne of the pantheon, he's still pretty mysterious.
Would it? Sorry, the pronunciation thing again. Would it be Tane and Kane?
Very likely.
Doesn't that sound? That to me sounds more like a Polynesian
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that only about a minute and a half ago I said I was going to pronounce a bunch of shit wrong. So I don't know if you'd stepped out for that part of my...
us is for sure.
In order to talk about the story of Makemake, we'll need some context. Actually, a lot of context, because whatever he may have started as, surely the history of the island and the people who worshipped him had an effect on what he became. So let's talk about Easter Island, its people, and its history. It goes without saying, obviously, that Easter Island is not the original name. Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen, obviously mispronounced, called it Easter Island when he became the first European to see the island in 1722, in the time-tested tradition of not asking the people who live there what they called their home.
Right. Why would you do that?
Right.
That way you would have to give up your right to name it.
Do they have a flag?
The Spanish took the Spanish version of the name, Isla de Pascua, which is how it's referred to by Chile, who claims the island to this day. However, the current Polynesian name of the island is Rapa Nui, although that name was only coined during the slave raids in the 1860s.
Oh, interesting.
The actual original name of the island was either simply Rapa, or possibly Tepito o Tehenua, which loosely translates to the navel of the world, or possibly Mata Kite Rangi, which means eyes looking to the sky. Or it's possible that the name has been lost.
Right.
So the indigenous people of Rapa Nui are referred to in Spanish as Pascuense, which means Easter people, but they call themselves the Rapa Nui after their island. They are considered to be ethnic Polynesians. The first inhabitants arrived on the island sometime between 300 and 1200 CE. It's been hard to nail that number down, but most likely closer to the latter, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty recent. I would expect longer.
Especially with what they've done with the island in the meantime.
Right.
What's crazy about the time period in which these guys landed here is that this is not a crowded neighborhood. The nearest inhabited island is Pitcairn Island, 1,289 miles away, and the nearest continental point is the west coast of Chile, 2,182 miles away.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yes, it's out there. There is an oral tradition about who found the island. What is certain is that because the Earth is round, yes, it's round.
We've had this discussion.
We're done with that.
I blanked that out from last week. That was just too... I was trying to figure out a way to make sense of that, and I ran out of English.
Well, because of the curvature of the Earth, there is no dry land from which to see Rapa Nui. The original inhabitants arrived on this remote island in large canoes or catamarans without knowing where it was or if it was there.
Sure, yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, the same is true of a lot of islands in the Polynesian history, but man, go to Google Earth.
This is basically the story of Gilligan's Island. I mean, if you think about it.
If Gilligan's Island was filmed by Darren Aronofsky. So go to Google Earth and pull up Rapa Nui. And even though you search Rapa Nui, the result you'll get is Easter Island. But there you go. And then slowly zoom out. If the bottom doesn't drop out of your stomach as you see just how remote this island is, you're braver than I am.
Yeah.
It's truly shocking how just in the middle of absolute nowhere. Legend has it that a chief named Hotu Matua and his captain Tauku Iho discovered the island after one of Hotu Matua's men saw the island in a dream. Once settled, the people of Rapa Nui can at least vie for the title of the longest string of bad luck in history.
Oh, wow.
As we'll discuss, there are some oral histories that tell the story of this ill-fated island and its culture and religion, but most of that information has been lost to what was to come. Some oral histories were recorded by early explorers and anthropologists, and even though the Europeans did Rapa Nui no favors, the culture had gone down a dark and deadly path long before their arrival. There is perhaps a written history that exists in the form of several dozen wooden planks with a strange and still undeciphered form of writing known as Rongo Rongo. This is thought to be an independent form of writing. That is to say, it was not derived or descended from any other form of writing. If that's the case, it's one of the few independent forms of writing in human history.
Yeah.
So these were artifacts that were found on Rapa Nui. So it may be that we have a robust history of the people right in front of us, but we'll never decipher it. By the way, not one of these Rongo Rongo planks still exist on Rapa Nui. They are all in museums and private collections around the world because,
Yeah.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Right, this belongs in a museum. If you're interested, you should look up these planks, just spelled like it sounds, Rongo Rongo. They're gorgeous, beautiful, and the language on them is extremely exotic, and like I said, not decipherable as far as we can tell. One of the things we know about the Rapa Nui was that aside from a pantheon of immortal beings like Makemake, they were an ancestor-worshipping religion. They believed that those who came before held prominent places in the pantheon and not only provided their descendants with all they needed, but could be called upon for protection and blessings. These ancestor-worshipping practices are in the forms of the statues that are all over Easter Island, Rapa Nui.
Oh, do they have statues? I hadn't heard that.
It's a little-known fact about Easter Island.
Exactly. So they pretty much immediately set about building these giant stone statues that are, ubiquitous all over the island. The statues, or moai, M-O-A-I, moai, were prominent chieftains and warriors and ancestors of the people. There have been 887 moai either under construction, completed, and in most cases destroyed that have been inventoried on the island.
887?
887.
Jesus.
They built the lion's share of them between 1100 and 1680 CE using only stone hand chisels, which would have made their construction a nightmare.
Right, because your tool breaks as often as the surface breaks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of these took over a year to construct each. They were all made out of a solidified volcanic ash found in a single quarry and then fucking dragged to their proper location.
How?
Well, that's a great question. The largest, we'll talk about that. The largest moai, known as Paru, weighed 90 tons and was over 32 feet long. How exactly they moved them isn't known, but attempts have been made to recreate the process, which vary from like getting just enough brute force, enough people to drag them across the land, or what they think is more likely is they cut down trees to use as rollers.
Sure.
Right? Whatever else this religion was, and as we'll discuss, most of it is lost to the tragedies to come, it was not an easy religion. Being called upon to chisel rock with rock and then drag several ton statues across miles of rough terrain is what you might call a high-cost religion. Sometime in this period, it is believed that the island suffered some form of environmental change that began to put pressure on the flora and fauna of the island. But the Rapa Nui continued to nearly completely deforest their island, very possibly to make rollers for these moais. Rapa Nui was home to 21 species of tree, including the largest palm trees in the world, and at least 6 species of land bird. But by 1722, when the first European arrived on the island, the birds were extinct, and nearly all the trees were gone. There were just a few remaining less than 10 feet tall.
Wow.
If it's true that the island was mainly deforested due to make rollers for religious totems, then it's possible that this act ranks amongst the most costly consequences of religious belief in history.
Wow.
In his book Collapse, Jeremy Diamond describes the moment when the last tree was cut down on Rapa Nui and how the impulse towards self-destruction lives within us all.
Yeah, I read that book. That was very grim.
Yeah, and that happened. Someone cut down the last major tree on the island. I'm not trying to denigrate these incredible statues. They are freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Just to point out their pointlessness. This near total deforestation caused massive soil erosion, which crushed agriculture, and pretty much eliminated fishing and trade because of the lack of good wood to make boats. As their current inventory of boats decayed and became useless, these poor people were left stranded and starving on their own island. Somewhere in this sad story, the Polynesian rat found its way to the island. How and when is not exactly known, but it could have come from
Is he in the WWE or the WWF?
Polynesian rat.
Yeah.
Lord.
He's a heel. He's a bad guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The rat could have gotten to the island from regular inter-island commerce or even possibly from the aforementioned European visitors. But when it got there, it wreaked havoc on the already fragile ecosystem. The fact that the Rapa Nui society was extremely stratified did not help. In the 15th century, a sustained period of fighting broke out between the various tribes on the island that would continue to the 1860s. So
how big is the island, Doug? I don't have a good idea.
It's very small. I don't have the square mileage in front of me, but it's not a large island.
Wow.
By any stretch. But the tribes on the island broke into a centuries-long war. This fighting included the burning of fields and killing of farm animals.
Oh my God, it's 63 square miles.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Oh, fuck,
it's
man.
really small.
Jesus.
But subsequent to all of this environmental degradation and this prolonged war, social order just vanished, and predatory bands of the warrior class basically took over the island. Most people took to living underground, and starvation and homelessness prevailed. Jeremy Diamond maintains that the inhabitants resorted to cannibalism during this particularly fun time. This was when the period. This was when the period of Huri Maui, or statue toppling, began. One way to reduce the spiritual power of a competing tribe was to topple their moi.
Oh my God!
To ensure that they were not only toppled but broken. By the time the French missionaries arrived there in the 1860s, nearly all of the moi had been tipped over. Which is, you think about what they had gone through to construct those things, and then they commenced to just knocking them over.
It sounds actually perfectly human to me. This is like, and as an encapsulation of the human psyche, build all of the big things. Oh wait, you have big things too. Knock over your big things,
and decimate your environment in the process.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. It is perfect.
A population that had likely ranged in the 15,000s had been reduced down to between 2,000 and 3,000 by the 1770s when the Europeans showed up, but worse was to come. The 1722 visit by Jacob Roggeveen resulted in the death of about a dozen Rapa Nui, but there's not really any description of what caused that. I think it might have been a fight that broke out.
What caused it? Europeans.
Exactly.
Is what caused it. Jesus.
Exactly.
It's the cause of death for most of the fucking world.
Oh, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Then in the 1860s, Peruvian slave traders began their vile work, capturing around 1,500 of what was left of the island's population, which was only around 2,000.
Jesus.
And then they were sold into slavery. Among those likely captured and sold were the last Rapa Nui to know how to read Rongo Rongo, which is why it's now entirely lost.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's awesome.
It's really cool.
Too. It's like it looks like something Keith Haring would have done.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of art form more than it does a language.
Yeah,
and you know what?
Really
it might
cool.
be. We'll never know. Eventually, the Peruvian slave traders had to repatriate. They were forced to repatriate some of their captives, but of course, they returned carrying smallpox and tuberculosis.
Why were they forced to?
Some of that, as slavery was being rolled back through the European states. The practice of going and capturing slaves on remote islands or African colonies was verboten. So that right, as we know, at some point in the Americas, and I forget me for forgetting the date, we had to live with the slaves we had. Right?
Yeah, that was fucked up. That was just mean.
Yeah, but so of course they repatriated these captives, and they came back with smallpox and tuberculosis,
right?
Which wiped out most of what was left of the population with such speed that some of the dead were not even buried.
Jesus!
By 1877, there were only about 111 Rapa Nui left alive on their island.
Oh my God!
During this prolonged period of misery, the population turned away from their strict ancestor worship and turned to what would be called the Birdman cult. Which brings us back to our old friend Makemake.
Okay.
Rather than worshiping dead ancestors, the center of this new cult would become the winner of an annual competition wherein competitors would swim to the island of Motu Nui, collect the egg of a sooty tern, which is a type of bird, swim back to Rapa Nui, and scale the cliffs of Orongo with the egg intact. This was an incredibly dangerous competition, with many drowning, being killed by sharks, or falling off the cliffs.
What is with these people?
I don't know.
Stop it.
I know. The winner of this competition would be called the Tangata Manu, but he would not be the leader for that year. The honor would go to the Rapa Nui who had sponsored the competitor. That sponsor would lead the people for the next year. So make of that what you will. Makemake was the primary deity of the Birdman cult, so named, obviously, because of the egg. And reigned supreme in the Rapa Nui religion right up until the time of the Catholic missionaries arrived, built a church, and imposed Catholicism on the wretched remnants of this culture in 1864.
Jesus fucking Christ.
At this point, the long, pretty shitty reign of Makemake came to an end. Although he is still part of the indigenous Rapa Nui culture, that is fighting for their rights and independence to this day.
How many people live there? Are there now?
There's about 7,700 or so people on the island, but only about 3,500 consider themselves to be cultural or
Indigenous
Rapa Nui.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, there has been a slight bounce back, but what's left of these people have been fighting to illegal fishing off their shores, having their land sold off to sheep ranching corporations, and even being used as a military base during the dictatorship of Pinochet.
Oh my God! Can we just leave them alone?
I know, right? Well, I don't know
They're
if that's a good
literally
idea.
so far away from everything. How do we not leave them?
Right.
I know,
It seems
but
like it's more trouble to not.
They have
leave
the
them
biggest
alone.
moat in the world.
Well, it doesn't. I don't know if leaving them alone is the best course of action. After
maybe
all,
not.
So
They're a threat to themselves, and others are a threat to them.
exactly, they're the panda of the human species, right?
Jesus.
So let's see. In 1966, they were finally granted Chilean citizenship, and in 2007, they gained special territory status. Their story, perhaps ranking among the most tragic, finds itself in good company with indigenous peoples around the world, and it's not something that anyone should be proud of. However, there is one more interesting chapter in the saga of Makemake. In 2005, astronomer Michael E. Brown discovered a new dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, originally given the name 2005 FY9. In 2008, it was renamed Makemake, as the International Astronomical Union has taken to naming Kuiper Belt objects after more diverse pantheons.
Okay.
Yeah, Makemake is the largest discovered dwarf planet after Pluto and orbits between 38 and 53 astronomical units, or AUs, from the Sun. That is to say, 38 to 53 times further away from the Sun than the Earth.
Right. Wow.
For reference, Neptune is 30 AUs away, and Pluto is 30 to 49 AUs away. So Makemake is out there.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of poetic to naming an object so far out in the middle of nothing, after the creator god of an island so far out in the middle of our small planet, that I kind of love.
Yeah,
Hopefully it still has trees.
Exactly. Makemake has at least one very tiny moon that has yet to be named. So I thought we could send the International Astronomical Union some recommendations from the various and sundry deities and doofuses we have covered on the show. So how about at IAU? How about naming Makemake's satellite Crom, or Baphomet, or Supermoon Shanzi, or Lunar Bundy, or my favorite, why not go with Uncle Doug?
That's very diverse.
Yeah.
It would
So
be Mars is the red planet, but Uncle Doug would be the first ginger planet.
There you go.
Technically a moon. So yeah, that's the sad story of Makemake and the culture he was in charge of.
Wow.
Good job, man.
Yeah.
There you
that
go.
was a wonderfully grim visit to what used to be the tropics.
I want to go there though. That I'm suddenly really interested in.
It by all accounts, it's beautiful. It's very stark because, like I said, they're trying to reforest the island, but that obviously takes time.
Yeah.
So the windswept nature, when you look at the pictures of the statues, it looks like they're on this windswept, very
Barren
stark,
place,
barren
yeah.
landscape. Well, it was not thus. It was a like all the other islands around it, Tahiti, Hawaii. It was completely covered in vegetation and trees, and was just completely scoured clean.
Well, once we're all vaccinated, we'll have a How to Heretic meetup out on Easter Island.
Well,
I
we
love
could
it.
do another movie recommendation here because apparently Mel Gibson made one of his very racist movies about Rapa Nui.
oh, great!
Did you know that?
Perfect.
No,
Yeah, I've never seen it, but apparently it got made. I don't know what happened to it, but it was about the ancient history of Rapa Nui. So it's going to be extremely oddly anti-Semitic for a film with no Jews in it. But check it out.
Great.
All right. Well, let's move on. You know, Uncle Doug. One of the few things one can do during this pandemic here is
it's time for masturbation talk on the How to Heretic.
time for rubbing one out. Is that for sure? if you just aren't too sad to do it most days, like, I don't know, someone I could name. But the other thing you can do is you can use the internet to peruse any sort of merchandise you might like.
Like
It's
lotion or tissues.
Okay, Doug, I guess this is where we're going.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. So, Dan, speaking of online masturbation.
Yeah, there is plenty of that. Online is useful for lots of things involving that. But yeah, I suppose you're right, Uncle Mark, that there is such a thing as retail therapy, which I know some people who have engaged in plenty of that during this pandemic. But there's also there's retail shopping out there that is, I would say, from my perspective, less therapeutic. And I wanted to delve into some of that. So, every so often, I get a little glimpse into the world of hardcore American Christianity. With all the stuff that I look at on this show and on Thank God I'm an Atheist, the advertising algorithms are pretty crazed when it comes to me. So sometimes some really baffling things come my way. Matter of fact, just this week, Facebook popped up an ad asking me if I wanted or if I had what it took to become a Catholic priest. So, as it turns
How did
out,
you answer?
I do not.
I was going to say.
No. Yep. That's a big negative. It's funny because I posted it onto Facebook and somebody was like, "You do know that priests are celibate, right?" And I was like, "I know that they're supposed to be celibate."
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Anywho, I've also seen ads for things like coffins made by Trappist monks and all sorts of exciting opportunities to support good missionary work around the world. Hooray. And then there are the wacky things that people post online. I don't remember where I saw it. Possibly the Unofficial Heretic Hangout on Facebook. I'm not sure. But I have to admit that I was entirely enthralled by the porcelain figurines. I think they may have been Christmas tree ornaments of a mer couple. In this case, it was a pregnant mermaid and a merman holding a baby. Apparently, mer gestation is very quick.
When you said
Both of
myrrh
whom-
people, I thought you meant like frankincense and myrrh. I'm like, what's a myrrh couple?
Oh, no. Like a mermaid and a merman.
Fish people.
Fish people,
Yeah.
half fishes.
Fish Americans.
Like I say,
Yeah.
she was pregnant, he was holding a baby, and both of them were wearing necklaces with crosses on them because apparently they were Christian sea creatures. So
It must
the
have
man
that
also
thing.
the man also had a belt holding up his fin, which I thought was a nice touch. Made him seem so clean cut. Anyway. With all that in mind, today I decided that I was going to dive as deep as I could tolerate into the world of Christian products. Now, I'm an oddly curious person, so I've been to a few Christian stores in my day. So it's not like I'm unaware of what's out there. It's actually, it's funny. There was one of the Christian stores that used to be here in Salt Lake that doesn't exist anymore. They had like a little acrylic box and a pad of little slips that you could fill out that were prayer requests. Uh-huh. And every time I went in there, which was maybe 3 times, I would fill out a few prayer requests. Now, if you're going to do this, kids at home, I recommend not going vulgar or insulting. It's just so crass. Keep it sincere. It's especially good if you can start out innocent and then sneak something in. Like, for instance, one of mine was something along the lines of, "Please pray for my grandmother who fell and broke her hip. She can't get around very well, so we got her a wheelchair, but her wife isn't strong enough to help her get out of it." Or something like, "Please pray for my son. He's left the church and he's so much happier now, and I just don't know what to do. He seems so content and at peace, and I'm worried he'll never come back. He says it's like a huge weight has been lifted from him." That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's hit the internet and see what products await, shall we? The first thing you're going to notice when you start entering the Christian search terms is wall-to-wall writing. T-shirts, hats, framed sayings listed as, quote, art, festooned with words like blessed and give it to God and faith over fear. Never just one font, mind you. Sometimes there are multiple fonts within the same word, so it's a font-tastic sort of adventure. And, of course, there are crosses everywhere. Once you get over the shock of bad design that you'll be sort of assaulted with, you can start to hone your search skills. Now, I dove into Etsy first, looking for especially funny, shocking, strange, or oblivious things. The first thing that struck me in the oblivious category was a framed image. It said, "He is risen, hung delightfully over a bed." Nice. Then I noticed a t-shirt that didn't say Jesus, it said Yeshua, and had Hebrew on it. This struck me as interesting because it both acknowledged the actual name of their Savior, which they've been saying wrong this whole time, and because it felt like it was part of the new-ish trend to blur the lines between Christianity and Judaism. This is even more overt on the design that just says Shalom in both English and Hebrew. And lest you think that a Jewish product just happened to pop up on my Christian search, I will read you the product description, which seems to just be a bunch of keywords. Shalom, peace, Christian, Hebrew, words, designs, Yeshua, Jesus, Christ, God, Christianity, Christian store. That is for a thing that just says shalom.
Oh my God.
More on that later, by the way. Put a pin in that. For the low price of just $79 or 4 payments of $19.75, you can have the Christ pen. This handcrafted ballpoint has a middle section that is made of olive wood imported from Jerusalem, inlaid with a bloodwood cross. Get it? Blood? That's symbolism right there for how Jesus was murdered on a cross. You get it? And it comes with an old-timey looking certificate, which is, of course, laminated, explaining what everything on the pen means. It's all very meaningful. So enjoy your ugly pen, guys. Then there are the clever reworkings of familiar logos, like the Christ is King shirt, but it's made to look like the Chick-fil-A logo.
Oh, no.
Get it? I mean, you know, Chick-fil-A, they make a big deal about being Christian. I guess that makes some kind of sense.
I feel like that's a fairly lateral move.
But then there's the FedEx logo, except they've removed the Fed part and turned the X part into Exodus. And underneath that it says, delivered, loved, healed. A little more of a stretch, but, you know, delivered makes sense for FedEx. Might have been smart to just stop at delivered. You don't need to add any words after that.
I don't know. I mean, does a delivery service that takes 40 years, like, is that appealing?
Right? Yeah. Do you really want to associate that with your God?
Just tracking that package day after day. Good Lord.
Right.
Where is it?
Yeah, truly.
Still in Gaza.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, a few steps more confusing is a shirt that has the Nintendo logo, except it says Nazareth. Now, you might think that they'd play with the old Nintendo slogan, now you're playing with power, right? But no. Underneath Nazareth, it says Home of the King, which has nothing to do with Nintendo as far as I can see. So 0 stars from me.
Do Christians not get sued often enough? Is that what I'm taking from this?
Right?
Just using other people's logos at will.
And isn't there a king at the end of Mario Brothers, or am I out of?
There's a princess.
Right. Therefore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
There you go.
I'm sure
A
there's
lot of our
some
listeners know.
There's some really good logic behind all of this, I'm sure.
Yeah, they've worked really, really hard on all these things. I think we'll discover that the theme of most of this is nobody has put any thought into any of this.
Right.
But all of this that we've talked about so far has mainly been from just individual sellers. So I want to go and see what we can find on a website specifically for Christian products. So I went to Swanson Christian Products, which requires that you have a pre-approved wholesale account to even order anything. which is funny because there's plenty of non-bulk products, but whatever. Poking around on their site, there was a lot of boring stuff, but I found a few things that tickled or confused me. I really like the Faith, quote, sports balls. Yes, these 4-inch in diameter soft cloth balls were perfect for inspiring faith. Too lightweight to be hacky sacks or baseballs or even decent juggling balls, these little guys are good for exactly 0 sports. But they do say faith on them, so sport balls.
What?
Also,
who's in the market for that? Like,
right?
there it is.
You know who it is? It's grandparents whose grandkids are about to very much dislike them.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Here you go,
Hey,
kids.
you can
Sports
play
balls.
with the sport balls. Oh, my God. Also in the activities section were the thou shalt not cheat playing cards. Isn't that nice? Cards that moralize at you as you play.
That's funny.
Oh, man, you say, I was totally going to cheat, and then I noticed what it says on the cards. It's especially interesting to me for 2 reasons. One, in spite of the thou shalt not wording, the Bible never, ever mentions cheating. And 2, many Christian sects decry playing cards as evil.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was a deal for a minute in our house, Doug, but then it kind of went away. Yeah.
Yeah, she had something against face cards for some period of time, but
Well,
Mormons aren't super wiggy about face cards.
they can be.
They can be. Older ones, I think.
I did find an article about Mormons and face cards with an amazing quote from Joseph F. Smith, who was the 4th or 5th, 6th, something president of the Mormon
Prophet
Church.
in the 30s or 40s, I think.
Who said, like, the grumpiest thing I've ever heard, which was, while a simple game of cards in itself may be harmless, it is a fact that by immoderate repetition, it ends in an infatuation for chance schemes, in habits of excess, in waste of precious time, in dulling and stupor of the mind, and in the complete destruction of religious feeling. There is the grave danger that lurks in persistent card playing, which begets the spirit of gambling, of speculation, and that awakens the dangerous desire to get something for nothing.
Yeah, not to mention
He goes on.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the quote is, men and women of industrial, businesslike, and thoughtful habits care little for frivolous pastimes, for pleasures that are sought for their own sake.
What a grump.
Yeah.
What an awful human that must have been.
Yeah.
And why didn't he mention the pollution of our precious bodily fluids?
Yeah. He didn't bring up a really an ecclesiastical objection at all.
No.
Right.
It was just, I object to people having fun.
Yeah, exactly. Also, our people should be too busy toiling to have any kind of fun.
Right.
Yeah.
On a Saturday afternoon.
Isn't there slave labor you could be doing right now? Okay. Well, if you like games but don't want the evil playing cards, you could play a version of Connect 4, which is the game where 2 players slide discs into a grid and try and get 4 in a row. Only these are Christian Connect 4, so they're special. One of them is Noah's Ark themed, so, I guess it has animals and stuff. And you can imagine all of your friends drowning to death as you play. The other is David and Goliath, which is weird because that means one of the players has to be the bad guy and that Goliath must win sometimes, right?
Yeah, well, knowing what we know about King David, I'm not sure that there is a clear bad guy in that, or
Right.
good guy in that scenario.
Right. Well, I mean, you're supposed to root for one of them, I think.
I'm going with the
But
giant.
you're absolutely right about that. There's also, I found stumbling block wooden puzzles. They're just literally interesting little 3D wooden puzzles. What do they have to do with Jesus? Shut up. That's what they have to do with Jesus. They're fun. So there you go. There's that. But that's all the fun and games. Some stuff is just for the clergy. Are you a pastor, but some of your congregants can't come into church, so you're not getting your cut of their Social Security check? Get the travel communion kits for the Eucharist on the go with optional gluten-free wafers. What if you need to bless someone? Try oil of joy anointing balms.
Ooh.
These naturally scented balms come in pomegranate, hyssop holy fire, balm of Gilead, lily of the valley. No, I mean, I guess that smells like lily. I don't know what balm of Gilead would smell like.
Probably just very potent BO.
Right, exactly. Frankincense and myrrh, and of course, my favorite, spikenard.
Yay! Our old friend Spikenard.
Spikenard!
Other products include the, quote, fashion conceal carry purse
Oh, my
in
God.
ornate leather with metal cross to match your cross-embroidered boot-cut jeans.
Oh, no.
Not sure what the difference between a purse made specifically to conceal your gun and, purse is, but they certainly aren't going to tell me.
There is no difference, but one's $100 more.
Yeah, exactly. Remember that we're Christians, but we like appropriating Jewish stuff thing that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, that's a huge thing right now.
Why not buy a Jewish tallit? That's the striped fringed poncho that Jewish men wear under their clothes, with an emblem on it that has a menorah connected to a Star of David, connected to a Jesus fish on it.
Oh.
Yeah, see that is the next step is hate crime.
Right?
Right.
I think we've actually stepped all the way to hate crime.
I think we're at the apparel department of hate crime.
Right. It's at least like strongly dislike crime. It's crazy offensive. And while we're at it, why not get a ladies' one for that anti-Semite woman in your life? They also have those brilliant little money tracts. These are the little pieces of paper made to look at a glance like they're a $5, $20, or $100 bill, but on closer inspection are actually just garbage with Jesus crap on it.
That shit is a hate crime. That is,
It is.
despicable.
It's super hateful. People can leave these lying around anywhere knowing that somebody will actually pick up the thing and look at it before throwing it away in disgust and annoyance. If you're a real asshole, you can leave one sticking out from under your plate at a restaurant so people think you tipped your server, and nobody knows what a shithead you are until you're well out of the building.
Yeah.
I point of order. I'm in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of our listeners need to be told this, but there is nothing that will make someone want to track you down in the parking lot and beat you to a pulp than leaving one of those things.
Oh,
These are people who are trying to pay their rent. You sons of bitches.
If you're in the United States of America now, I know that our European and other parts of the world listeners will. This is different, but if you're in the USA and you eat at a restaurant and you don't tip your server and you don't tip them well, we're talking 20%, none of this 15 stuff. You're not a good person.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and it is what we have to work with, and it is one of the many things wrong with our country, but it's not in the top 10. So leave it to
Right. It's not in the top 10, but don't do that shit.
Don't do that shit. Finally, on that site, there is my favorite, which is a set of 6 "Have you prayed for your president today?" magnets. Inexplicably, these are on clearance at 80% off. Wonder why that would be.
What are they? A set of 6 what?
Magnets that all say, "Have you prayed for your president today?" Which I don't think they're praying for their president as much as they were before.
Yeah, probably that's probably slowed down for reasons nobody can really understand.
How could you even figure that
Yeah.
out? Anyway, next I went to a site called Family Christian. Scanning the various options, I immediately clicked on the fashion tab because duh. It was unfortunately a stunning disappointment. 3 burlap-looking tote bags with phrases like "happy, healthy, blessed" on them. 4 bits of very uninspiring jewelry. 1 Trust Jesus t-shirt. And a giving shawl. Now, what's a giving shawl? Well, it's a nubby textured, that's their words, nylon throw blanket that comes in a box with a bow on it. So you can give it. I shit you not, there is a product video for this thing that feels exactly like a Mormon inspirational movie. Cloying piano music under a slideshow of still photos of two women sharing a very special moment as one of them gives the other a shawl.
I remember my first shawl.
Oh, who doesn't remember that moment? It's a special moment in everybody's life. It actually suggests that you hug your friend into their new shawl so that you'll really be able to connect over this beautiful taupe rectangle. Here's a quote from the product description. Each time it's worn, it will convey the special bond you share through friendship, prayer, and caring. On sale now
It's
for
a blanket.
$45.99. It's a fucking blanket.
Jesus.
But it's not even.
It's the
I
dumbest
don't.
thing.
The last thing I want when I'm trying to sleep is a nubby texture.
Well,
That's just
don't
me.
sleep in your shawl then.
Well,
So
I've got to do
fashion
some more
was-
shopping before your birthday then.
Right. Exactly.
I think the only thing you can do in a shawl is drink your coffee with two hands as you watch the sunrise.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what shawls are for, obviously. Well, fashion was clearly a bust for me, so I bopped over to the gifts section, which is where I found baby's first pearl bracelet. Oh. What? Do you think it's somehow weird to give an infant an obvious choking hazard? Do you find it bizarre to put semi-precious jewelry on someone too young to know literally what anything is? Well, don't worry. This 4.5-inch stretch bracelet doesn't use real pearls. That would be weird and crazy. No, this has fine glass pearls with one pewter bead with a cross stamped into it. So, perfect for a newborn.
So choke on that, young'un.
Exactly.
That's right. Unless you think that I'm joking about the newborn business, well, the product description wants you to know that it's, quote, tiny enough to even wear home from the hospital.
Oh my God.
Unless you think that that weird suggestion isn't what they're seriously suggesting, the bracelet comes in a cute gift box with a beautifully written poem that suggests this tradition. I did not make any of this up. Here we go. On the day you were born, this bracelet was worn. On your wedding day, place it in your bride's bouquet.
Ooh.
Someone literally put ones of minutes into that.
I was about to say, like,
writing.
that's it.
I was waiting for the big finish, but there wasn't one.
And Dan,
That's it.
I literally thought you were going to say the product was infant's first pearl necklace, which is a sentence that requires me to now call Andrew Torres.
Yes, that's right.
I will show myself to HR at this point.
Don't look that up, Mom.
I literally
Anyway,
thought you were going to say that. I'm like, oh, please no.
It's not much better. I don't know. And here's the thing. I don't know if this pearl bracelet thing is a Southern or Midwest thing that I'm just not aware of. I may be insulting some of our listeners who think this is a beautiful idea, but honestly, don't put chokeable jewelry on your babies. Just don't. It's not cute.
Well, not the ones you like.
Right, especially not on their wrists.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing that's going to go directly into their mouth the
Exactly.
first thing they get. All right. How about a book? Of course, there are all manner of How to Love Your Invisible Daddy More books and 8,000 different Bibles that purport to be for different niches. What the fuck is the difference between the Woman's Study Bible and the Battlefield of the Mind Bible? They're still the same Bible, right? But anyway, there are other books too. I'll close us out with one that I've ordered for both of you and should be coming anytime now. It's called It's Never Too Late. Make the next act of your life the best act of your life by Kathy Lee Gifford. Now, this one, it will help you find the inspiration to live out your dreams, speak out for your beliefs, and pursue what matters. And I thought I would, I just quote a little snippet from the book. This is Kathy Lee talking. Here we go. Certain moments in life can take on a rich significance in retrospect. Take, for instance, the time I was kicked out of the Brownies. No, I'm not kidding. I was actually kicked out of the brownies. They insisted that I turn my beanie in. All because I had bought into the join the brownies, see the world propaganda.
What?
If you don't want to keep reading after that, I don't know what to tell you.
They tore off her shoulder boards and broke her saber.
Anyway, obviously, I am just scratching the nubby textured glass pearl festooned surface of the world of Christian-oriented products. This literally is just the reputable stuff.
The reputable
I'm sure that
stuff.
there's an even spookier underbelly that I didn't even get to.
Black market.
Yeah, we're going to have to save that for another time, as I almost lost my life just looking at this stuff. So
There is a black market for Christian goods, and it's what the Bible Museum was buying.
That's right.
Stolen
That's right.
artifacts
It's
from
called Hobby
ISIS.
Lobby.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, everybody, get to shopping.
Or don't.
Enjoy yourself.
Use the How to Heretic discount code at checkout.
That's right. Well, fellas,
Hello.
Hello.
I just want. This is the time in our little show where we say thank you to the people who are new to giving us their money,
Yes.
and we that makes them our favorite types of people. Anyone can do it, but few are called.
This year, that makes them my principal employer as
Right.
well.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
100%. You guys.
So you are very beloved. Trust me.
We are literally unable to do any other. Mark and I are unable to do any other kind of work currently. So, thanks everybody.
Yeah, for real.
So we have some folks to thank. Thanks so much to Keith, to Sandflea, and to Jason. You guys are awesome. We certainly appreciate you. Now, look. You can do this. Not everybody can do this, but if you can, if you are able to maintain employment and gainfully so, please feel free to go to howtoheretic.com and click on the little support us button, and that'll take you to our Patreon, and then you choose how much you want to give. That's up to you. We're not going to judge, but we sure do appreciate the folks who do that. If you can't afford that, there are other ways that you can help. You can give us stars.
Yes.
You can fill our sky, as Uncle Mark likes to say, with stars.
Guide us
5
home.
or die. If you give us anything fewer than 5 stars, you're just being mean.
You're a bastard person.
That's
So
right.
Just lie. Give us 5. What does it cost you? You don't have a soul. I think we've demonstrated that on this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So bear false witness. Call us great. Write a review. Give us stars, and let's move the fuck on.
Well, Uncle Dan,
Hello.
stand-up comedians have this saying where you end on a high note, and once your audience is the most happy and the most boisterous and having the best time, you walk away.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Bring it home. You got to bring it home. Go big.
We at the How to Heretic do not subscribe to that particular axiom.
Yeah, we've learned the opposite lesson.
We reject all precepts of comedy, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're gonna bring it home one more time with well, Uncle Mark, why don't you tell us?
It's so this isn't it. At least this was a long time ago, so that helps. So I don't know if you guys caught any of the impeachment trial in the Senate this week, and we talked about it a little bit in the patrons only. So if you want to hear it, go to become a patron. But there were some real ups and downs, and some very fine, very professional arguments on both sides. I'm just kidding. The Democratic House managers presented a devastating case and left no room for the defense to operate. And the bus bench slip and fall lawyer, it is literally true that the guy who gave the closing argument is a slip and fall lawyer of the clown show defense, blamed Madonna and Johnny Depp for the Christian nationalist attack and said Trump is a man of peace. And they really said this: his rhetoric is often too nuanced for his own good. So, now by the time this airs, you will know that Mr. Trump has been acquitted of all charges, of course, because this was him shooting someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
Anyway, the wrecking ball of a lead manager, Jamie Raskin, quoted both Thomas Paine and Voltaire, two giants of the Enlightenment, of Enlightenment thinking, and while they weren't exactly atheists, as the 18th century, in the 18th century they were deists. They were kind of the atheists of their time, right? So I thought that was interesting that he particularly chose those two people. He, of course, cited one of Voltaire's best-known quotes, and that is, "Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities," in reference to Trump's big lie, leading to the Cracker Barrel terror attack on the Capitol. But here I want to cite another Voltaire quote I found in doing my research for this week's segment, and I quote, "Goa is sadly famous for its Inquisition. Equally contrary to humanity and commerce, the Portuguese monks made us believe that the people worshiped the devil, and it was they who served him." So that's right. This week, we're going to climb into the big old Catholic Wayback Machine of horror and genocide and talk about the Goa Inquisition. Have you you guys heard about this little 16th century garden party on the Indian coast before?
I have not.
I mean, I've heard of Goa, and I've heard of Inquisitions.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both. So we've all heard of the Inquisition broadly, whether or not we expected it. And while the Spanish Inquisition is generally the most well-known, it is neither the first nor the only of Catholicism's famous game of how many shattered bones will it take to get you to a yes on the whole Jesus thing. The Holy Inquisition was a Vatican office and a system of, quote, inquiry and justice aimed primarily at making sure Catholics stayed Catholic and, at minimum, 100% Catholic in only the most orthodox of all possible ways. Any deviation from the bare minimum of total compliance with papal orthodoxy could lead to a rather unpleasant series of events for the accused heretic, including humiliation, torture, and death by a number of different methods, most famously being burned alive in front of your whole community after prolonged torture. Now, we covered one horrible little corner of the French Inquisition when we discussed Father Urban Grandier and his incineration in episode 151. And indeed, the first of many inquisitions began in France in the mid-12th century. And in fact, the office of the Inquisition still exists, rebranded as the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, very recently overseen by self-dethroning Pope Nazicus Benedict of Palpatine, and was instrumental in gathering and destroying as much evidence as of possible child rape in the Vatican's international child rape cover-up operation. So this delightful institution has been with us for 800 fucking years, guys. Happy birthday to you, dear Inquisition. But be warned, when you lean in to blow out the candles, they are really, really gnarly. Lots of black smoke.
Yeah.
Now, the most famous of the Inquisitions, the Spanish-speaking one, took off under the reign of Ferdinand and Isabella and resulted in their total expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492. That was a big year for Catholic Spain, you may be aware. Many tens of thousands of whom fled to the more tolerant Portugal for safety. But sadly, just a few years later, the madness and bloodlust of the Inquisition spread to Portugal as well, and the king there decided to force those Jewish refugees to convert to Catholicism. That was hard for me to say forcibly. These new converts were called crypto-Jews or new Christians. That's going to be very important in this conversation. Both of them were pejoratives. Quick aside, many Jews fled Spain and ended up in Morocco, where they were welcomed by the Muslim king and lived in peace for centuries. And one of the most magical days of my life included a very surprise visit to the amazing Jewish cemetery in Marrakesh. You remember that, Doug?
I do.
That was quite a day. When I was suddenly informed by our tour guide that I was from Israel, so only speak Hebrew, and I was like, the what?
Yeah, exactly.
And in we went.
Wow.
So the very next year, the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama found his way around the southern tip of Africa all the way to the impossibly beautiful west coast of India, therefore finding the long-sought-after water route to the subcontinent, making the long and dangerous transport of goods via the overland Silk Road obsolete for Europe. He returned home with goods and spices worth 16 times the cost of the voyage. And as you can imagine, the Spanish court was thrilled. So in a few short years, the Portuguese had established their colony around the port city of Goa. And before long, they controlled more than half of the coastline of India through violence and some alliances and alliances of convenience with warring Muslim and Hindu kingdoms on the continent. Many of Portugal's new Christians, remember the forcibly converted Jews, saw this new, very distant colony as a place not only for some commercial opportunities, but a much safer place for them, far from the torture chambers of the Inquisition and the king's spies. So a significant amount made the long journey all the way to Goa in the hope of a better life.
Wow.
And for a while, it was. There were actually, I had no idea about this, there were actually long-established Jewish communities in India from as far back as perhaps the 6th century BCE.
Wow.
But for sure, since 70 CE, that the various Hindu kingdoms had not only tolerated, but allowed them pretty much total freedom to practice their faith unmolested. So the Portuguese new Christian arrivals found India not only bursting with opportunity, it was multicultural, multilingual, and tolerant of their faith, whether that be Judaism or Catholicism. Despite the obvious crime of colonization, most of the locals were eager to trade and cash in, right?
Sure.
Stuff went both ways, lots of money. So they had a few relatively blissful decades in their new home, actually. Well, any Jew should know that bliss is not a permanent state of being. In 1542, the saintly Francis Xavier, co-founder of the Society of Jesus, commonly known as the Jesuits, who somehow have inflated themselves to the good guys in the broader Catholic story, which is insane, he arrived in Goa, looked around, and decided that these so-called new Christians, despite now being outwardly Catholic for generations, were not up to his snuff of fanatical devotion to Rome and her church. So he set in motion the mechanism that would become the Goa Inquisition. But randomly, he died before the King of Portugal approved the request, so history wants to spare him the direct blame for what transpired, so he was acquitted of incitement to inquisition, I suppose.
Yeah.
So the Inquisition set up shop in Goa in 1560 and set about convincing the new Christians whose grandparents and great-grandparents were the original Portuguese immigrants that they were still too Jewy. In truth, some of them were practicing Judaism in secret, both in and outside the Goa colony, but some were now as Catholic as the Pope, but damned by their lineage. Now, in Goa, the Goa Inquisition lasted just 252 short years, and when it was disbanded by royal decree in 1812, the Jesuits who had been conducting it had the foresight to destroy all the records they could find, a Catholic sacrament that maintains to this day when evidence of wrongdoing could be costly. So it's hard to know the actual numbers here, but many of the new Christians were brutally tortured and imprisoned, where many died because they were unable to appear Catholic enough for the magistrates of the Inquisition. Remember, in all the Inquisitions in the world, France, Spain, Portugal, Peru, Mexico, Africa, and here in India, the accused was presumed guilty upon accusation.
Right.
And the burden of proof was entirely on them to prove their innocence, which is the direct opposite of any modern concept of justice, right?
Right.
And the only way they believed the truth could be arrived at was via torture and terror as a matter of course.
Which is the same as all modern.
It is just like modern justice, sadly. In fact, the Latin inscription on the very spooky coat of arms of the Spanish Inquisition reads, Exurge Domine et judica causam tuam, which in English is rise up and plead your case. That
Really?
That gives me the fucking chills. Before long, the Inquisitors were running out of new Christians to terrorize. So they cast their eyes about one of the most diverse places on earth at the time, saw Hindus, Muslims, Jains, and even Buddhists in need of the salvific agony of Jesus' love. So while they had their missionaries forcibly converting all non-Christians in the territory to Catholicism, creating loads more, you guessed it, new Christians, they also had mobs of priests and soldiers destroying nearly 800 Hindu temples and shrines in Goa until they satisfied themselves that there wasn't one left standing in the whole territory.
Jesus.
And then laws meant to break the Hindu religion and culture were instated. Hindus could not hold any public office. They could not give testimony. They could not celebrate Hindu marriages or funeral rites. And a Hindu child whose father died was considered an orphan, regardless of whether their mother and extended family were alive or not.
Oh, my God.
And the church would inherit 100% of the deceased father's property. So remember, this was a very prosperous port town long before the Portuguese got there. So there was a lot of money in Goa, right? You know how police departments have the insane right to seize all the property belonging to a suspect when they kick in the door, even if it's the wrong house? That's what this was. Just officials seizing property pretty much at will. Before long, the Inquisitors had recreated themselves as a princely class in Goa, living in the finest houses of the newly orphaned merchant class, spending wildly and making merry with local women. But hey, if you take the profit motive out of theocratic terrorism, what's even the point? and as the converted Hindus and other forced converts were despised and untrustworthy as new Christians, they were even more in the sights of the loving Jesus's judicial torturers than they were as Hindus. If you think the game was rigged, you would be correct. There was no way to win the Goa Inquisition game. And as I remember, and remember that it wasn't just the poor Hindus, it was also Indian Buddhists, etc., that were invited upon pain of torture and death to be new Christians and subject to terror and harassment. The Portuguese Navy had sacked much of the region over the years. I talked about how they controlled most of the coastline of India. and they had seized an extremely sacred object from a temple in Sri Lanka, believed by Buddhists to be the actual tooth of Buddha. This was an outrage.
I didn't know Buddhists did relics. That's interesting.
Yeah, apparently there are some relics. This was an outrage to Buddhists all over Asia, and a local king offered a fucking fortune to buy it back from the Catholic authorities in Goa. The Portuguese called it the monkey's tooth or the ape's tooth, in accordance with the racist slur that they used for Asians generally. And the padres of the Inquisition called it a genuine satanic source of evil that had to be destroyed. So the king's ransom was refused, and a huge public show was made of destroying it in Goa. Now, that there was this huge batch of trembling and terrified new Christians, the game really was afoot. The greatest sin to the Inquisition was not failing to be Catholic in the first place, like just being a Hindu, but rather heresy, meaning being a Catholic by force or by choice, but having practices and beliefs, or even being suspected of such, outside their rigid orthodoxy. That's why New Christian was interchangeable with the term crypto-Judaic or crypto-Hindu. You were always suspect of pining for the old ways. Huh. And how could one find themselves branded a heretic and therefore guilty in the eyes of the Inquisition in that very moment? Well, your friends, neighbors, and even family members were heavily incentivized to brand you as such. The Inquisition and the accuser would split the accused's property 50-50. So you have an enemy, someone stole your girl, some guy undercut your business or just looked at you askance, want to see him tortured and get half his shit. One call, that's all. We're the Inquisition, and we can get you a handsome settlement sooner than you think. How could that system possibly go wrong? The most common local language in Goa is called Konkani, and it was banned on pain of torture. All literature and art of non-Portuguese or non-Catholic origin was burned. The Goa Inquisition was evil as fuck. And again, because the wily Jesuits tried to destroy almost all evidence of it ever having happened, the true scope of this crime against humanity is hard to quantify. But weirdly, historians' best guess say that only 57 people in this 252 years died at the stake, with another 64 people who had died in prison awaiting their fate, had their remains burned in their coffins, with an effigy of them burning above the coffin at the same time.
Good Lord.
Because Catholicism is both ruthlessly diabolical and incredibly silly. Please see our episode on the Cadaver Synod in episode number 59 for that. But at least 16,000 and as many as twice that number of people were accused, imprisoned, tortured, and lost everything they ever had in what amounted to a smash-and-grab robbery by the Jesuit fathers looking to materially improve their lot in life. As as Catholic inquisitions go, the report card for the Goa Inquisition's body count is pathetic. So bad, I doubt the Pope even put it on the fridge. Just the fabled Spanish Inquisition likely killed at least 30,000 people in its tenure, torturing and terrorizing no less than 250,000 more. But the Goan Inquisition seems very much more about using the authority of the church to enable economic colonialism, less via straight-up homicide, and more through the annihilation of a culture, language, and religion to keep the silk and the spice flowing. And if the God-anointed torturers got their beaks wet in the process, what's the harm, right? So that's the Goa Inquisition. It was not the worst, but certainly wasn't anything to write home about. And
well, is there a best Inquisition? I mean, obviously there can be a worst one.
Well, if it's all about the stats, then I would imagine the Spanish one or the Lima Inquisition in Peru probably were the ghastliest. But what's really crazy too is that India, as everybody knows, gained independence from England in 1947, but it took until 1961 for them to kick the Portuguese out of Goa.
Really?
Yeah, and the Indian army literally had to attack it to get them the fuck out. So
Well, it's very nice there. I can totally understand that.
it's beautiful. Like, I've never been, but have you been to Goa, Dan?
No, I've been. That's one of the few places that I didn't go. It's like the touristiest place because it is apparently so. It's just beautiful. Lots of beaches. And stuff.
The pictures are beautiful. Big green hills, very lush, beautiful beaches. But no place for a new Christian in those years. So that's the Goa Inquisition, guys.
Well, you were right. At least it happened a long time ago.
The upside is it's a long time ago. So let's get out of here. Oof.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you ever built or knocked down somebody's giant statue, please send an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you were determined an orphan after your father died, leave us a voicemail about it at 903-888-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter at HowToHeretic.
And as always, thanks to our incredible patrons.
And thanks to our suspicious new Christian, Cody Layton, for editing the show.
And thanks to all of you, friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye.